here today with our amazing CEO, Kylee Bates. We just wanted to give you a little bit of opportunity to hear directly from Kylee about the impact of lockdown and restrictions on our ARDOC volunteers and also on our partner sites. If you do have some additional questions, we'll be more than happy to answer. So please just email that to us in the next week or so. So Kylee will be able to receive the questions, and we will send you an email and respond. Thank you so much. So Kylee, thank you for being with us today. I'm going to take you over a few questions. So the first thing I do want to ask is, when will education volunteers be able to go back into our partner sites? So in the schools or earliest settings?
Thanks, Maya. And it's great to be able to have this conversation, because I know you and Sarah and others in the team do a great job of connecting with our volunteers and keeping them informed. But, you know, we know that there's lots of questions that people have that begin to emerge as we go in and out of lockdown, especially here in Victoria, and we know in New South Wales that's an extended period. So the short answer to when will education volunteers be able to go back into classrooms and early years services, we don't know. We as an organisation are obviously very guided by public health guidelines. ARDOC's very committed to trying to keep both our employees, volunteers, children and educators we all work with safe. So at the moment, as we record this, we're in lockdown in Victoria and New South Wales, as well as, even as restrictions are eased, we have to be guided by the Department of Education. And they very quickly, after each lockdown, issue operational guidelines, and we try to work with those as closely as possible and get volunteers back. It's great, however, that some of our volunteers, our workplace volunteers who are engaged in writing letters and numeracy blogs, are in some way still able to connect, which is fortunate. We're just sorry we can't provide that opportunity to all of our education volunteers.
Thanks, Kylee. And we do know we have quite a lot of education volunteers that are keen to kind of go back and as quick as possible. So that's a great knowing for them that hopefully once the Department of Education let us know, we can have that back. So is there anything that our education volunteers can do during lockdown to support ARDOC?
Look, I think the first and foremost is stay connected. We know last year and this year we're continuing that trend of trying to provide more professional development opportunities. It's a great chance to connect, although it's virtual and we all love the face-to-face. One of the benefits we've gained is the access to great speakers more readily available to run these sessions for ARDOC. So stay connected, and the more connected our volunteers are, the minute that schools say, the guidelines say, yes, we can have you back, and schools say, we want you back, we can get volunteers in there pretty quickly. We have been able to provide some opportunities over time where perhaps education volunteers have been able to write a letter to the class that they're used to volunteering in if they've already been a volunteer. And I guess one of the biggest challenges in finding ways for volunteers to continue to support is that it is actually a really challenging time for teachers and educators during remote learning. So as an organisation, we're really conscious of trying to strike that balance between how can we offer support without overburdening teachers who have suddenly got a very different way of working and trying to connect sometimes with quite vulnerable children who are learning in their homes.
Definitely, and we have been, receiving some information also from our volunteers that have been definitely trying to see if they can support somehow, but definitely very busy teachers in schools. So how is ARDOC handling day-to-day operations during extensive lockdowns?
Look, I think first and foremost, our team collectively continue to do a great job in terms of the commitment that they're showing to schools and early years services in trying to support them, staying connected with volunteers, and where we are able to operate programs, things like literacy buddies and numeracy buddies that many of our corporate partners participate in, just being adaptable and flexible. So like everybody in the community, it is up and down. We all have our days where, it's, we've got to rebook that program or we've got to make that change. But I think one of the things that 2020 taught us, and we're having to all bring that into 2021 and into the future, is just being able to be flexible, adaptable and respond. And knowing that when we put plans in place, sometimes those plans will change, but thinking about how we can change and change quickly so that we can continue to provide that support. We've been blessed by continuing to have some great funders who continue to support our work, which means we're able to continue to adapt and develop and to some extent try new things and new ways of working. So if you'd asked me at the start of the pandemic last year, none of us knew how we would go through, and I think that's kind of an amazing ARDOC story of our staff and our volunteers have continued on that journey and really got stronger and been able to create new partnerships during a very difficult time.
Thanks, Kylee. And I definitely think innovation is a big part of ARDOC and what we do, especially with our EdVols. It's amazing that we're able, as we said, to connect. So thank you.
Yeah.
And what is ARDOC's approach to vaccination, and what measure is ARDOC taking to keep volunteers safe when they can return to volunteering?
Yeah, that's a really important question, Mayan. And obviously, anybody who watches anything on the news will know that vaccination, both supply of vaccination, vaccination rates, vaccination hesitancy, and conversations about when or if vaccines will be mandated in particular circumstances. ARDOC's approach is very much one of strongly encourage people as part of a public health response to get vaccinated where they're able to and as quickly as they're able to. We're not in a position to mandate that for our staff or volunteers, but very much encourage it. ARDOC for our paid staff has been able to put in place some additional leave provisions, which is really intended to encourage people to take time off if they need to during the work to go and get their vaccinations, or, you know, if they need a COVID-19 test. So to really provide that support for that to happen. And, you know, many of our leaders have been quite open about, you know, the fact that they've got their vaccination. I'm proud to say and very fortunate that I was able to have both of mine. A number of other leaders at ARDOC have certainly done so. And, you know, most staff who, you know, are trying to find ways to become eligible and, you know, stand in queues to get those. So I think from a vaccination point of view, you know, we really encourage everybody in our community to do what they can to help the rest of the community. In terms of when volunteers go back into the classrooms, it is very much about understanding, you know, all of the rules and that we've got used to, you know, social distancing, sanitising, mask wearing, all of those recommendations need to be in place. We've had in the past a health declaration that volunteers have been asked to complete, and obviously as school guidelines are updated and change, it's about keeping people informed. So again, we just want to put that message of health and safety for ourselves and each other at the front and centre of everything that we do. And if in doubt, come and talk to us when the situation arises. If people have concerns, we need to know that, we want to know that, and we'll work with our volunteers to ensure that their experience of volunteering with ARDOC is safe for them and the children they work with.
Definitely, and again, the schools are really taking a lot of precautions before bringing back people, visitors, in order to make sure that everybody is safe. So
absolutely,
thank you for everything that also ARDOC does. What support is ARDOC giving to schools and early years centers during lockdown? For example, will there be more opportunities for volunteers to lend a hand through virtual space?
Yes, so we are working with schools and early years services as much as possible. In some cases, we've got virtual incursions that we can offer. Some of our school partners have been able to offer that quite effectively while children are remote learning. In other cases, it's a case of waiting until the children are actually back in the classroom, even if volunteers are not. And those incursions have still been really highly valued by the educators and by the children having that experience. As well, we're trying to put in place some of the supports that support the educators while we might not be able to provide direct programs. So whether that's professional development for teachers who are running our robotics program, or the training about our early years programs for new education partners, which is also about readying them to have more volunteers when they can go back. We continue to deliver, I think I've mentioned already, the workplace volunteering programs. They perhaps don't run as quickly as possible and as many exchanges as possible, but they very much still provide a connection for those children who might be at home and, you know, get that letter from their workplace buddy, which is a really important experience for them during this time, as well as those who've had their letters from their classroom education volunteer.
Great. Yes, and some education volunteers are also doing the literacy buddies program. So some people do have the opportunity a little bit to go into this virtual.
And it's very rewarding for the children. And I think the feedback that we've had from some of the teachers already is how much that's been appreciated by them and their students during this time.
Great. And the last question is really around mentoring. Is ARDOC going to consider to move into the mentoring space to help young people in education, or will they purely go around literacy and numeracy?
Yeah, so good question. One of the things that is really important about the programs that we deliver is that they're things that are desired and wanted by schools. And increasingly, one of the things that we need to do is to better understand how needs at schools change. And we do that through a variety of formal and informal feedback mechanisms with schools, and then understand what their needs are. And then if that is something different from what we're currently delivering, what would that look like as a program? And importantly, we like to understand, is there somebody else who might already be delivering that program or something like that, which means we might not be the best organisation to deliver it, and we continue to deliver or develop alternative programs that meet school needs. And the other part of that equation is always, how is that funded? So, and very much, of course, the child safety considerations around any type of program that we deliver. So they're all factors that we weigh up. But we do try and look at what might be an opportunity, how we might pilot that. We get the feedback from the schools or the education partners or early years services, and that then informs our decision making. I think the feedback and the evaluations we've done is that the Education Volunteers program, with that focus on literacy, still provides that connection with positive adult role models, which is really an important part of a mentoring program anyway. So while we don't formally call it a mentoring program, and it's quite different, it does have that element that is really important while still supporting core curriculum learning. But we evolve and adapt. ARDOC does very different things to what it did 30 years ago, but the core of our approach and engaging with school partners and supporting the needs of children in disadvantaged communities hasn't. So who knows what programs we might be delivering in 30 years' time, Maya.
Definitely, and I have heard a lot of our volunteers build really good rapport with the children. So that mentoring part is definitely part of it, but we really want to get also that literacy and numeracy flow so the children can get enough support. So Kylee, thank you so much for today. I'm sure our education volunteers are going to enjoy hearing your answers, and hopefully there'll be a few more questions.
Yeah, no, and it would of course be nice to, you know, it's nice to do these in person, but that's probably a way off. But we do hope this is useful, and absolutely encourage further questions. And if they come in via the volunteers@ardoc.org.au email, I know you and the team will be able to compile some responses and go back out to them. So thanks everybody. It's been really nice to have the opportunity to share perhaps some answers to some questions we know that some of you had.
Thank you.